Perfect. So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us today. Today, we are going to be talking about strategies for practicing those social skills with your teen and adult. My name is Sylvia Gill. I'm part of the Daniel Jordan Fiddle Foundation Transition and Adult Teen Program at UM-NSU CARD, and we really appreciate you being here with us tonight. So, for tonight, what we're going to be kind of discussing is really looking at what are social skills and kind of social skills, not just in making friendships, but how does it really impact and the importance of social skills in our everyday life. We're going to talk a little bit about family members as these lifelong coaches. And then we're going to talk specifically about the strategy. So, how do we implement some of these skills while we work with our teen and adults on social skills? So, first, let's look at the importance of social skills. We know that social skills are necessary for effective interpersonal functioning. So, we know it also includes both the verbal and the nonverbal skills and the behaviors that are socially valued and are likely to elicit a positive response from others. So, what does that kind of mean? And pretty much, social skills is kind of making your eye contact, using those nonverbal communication. So, not only using it, but understanding what are nonverbal communication, reading those nonverbal body cues, which could be kind of difficult for a lot of our guys, initiating and maintaining conversations, taking another's point of view. We also know it's about making and keeping friends. A lot of the self advocacy at school or work, as well as disclosure, also involves those social skills. And now, when we talk about social skills, it's not just, I think many of us think social skills is our teens and adults making friends. But what sometimes we forget is that social skills really is how we interact in every single aspect of our lives. So that could just be going to the grocery stores, taking public transportation, or purchasing something. Just think about maybe getting pulled over and getting a ticket or a car accident, your involvement and your skills with the police officer, or even jobs, as well as social media. So if you think about our social skills, it's really not just the relationships we have with people, but also our daily interaction of our everyday lives and what we do in those kinds of interactions. And we know a lot of our guys have a lot of challenges when it comes to autism and social skills. And some of these challenges, you can probably recognize in your own children is those problem solving skills, maybe initiating, maintaining those conversations, some of that flexibility and coping skills. We also know that a lot of our adults and teens have restricted range of interests. So they only really want to discuss maybe three things, and that's all they want to talk about. Making and maintaining those interpersonal relationships as well as their self advocacy. So some of our guys also struggle with some of the eye contact, which also then goes into the nonverbal communication. Reading those nonverbal cues, spatial awareness, generalization, and perspective taking. So when we see some of these challenges, it kind of makes sense. Okay, now I know why my teen or adult really can struggle. And they have to kind of overcome and learn some skills in order to properly, utilize their social skills. And so, why do we think this is so important? So, social skills, kind of what we talked about, it really encompasses your everyday interaction, not just with your friends, but even at work. And so, if we have good social skills, we know that these teens and adults have good relationship building, good common interactions. Another one we're going to talk about is safety, regulating their emotions, so utilizing those coping skills and being appropriate. We know that if you have good social skills, you create those positive relationships, could lead to dating. Also, those life skills and independence all require some social skills. As great as some of these guys are at work, sometimes those social skills can get them into trouble. So, really, if we can work on that, we also see a lot of success in the workplace. We also then see that less depression, less anxiety, more efficiency because they can effectively communicate, as well as that increased quality of life and happiness. So this is why we really kind of also want to focus on social skills, not just making the friendships, but really increasing all those positive interactions, whether it's at home, with friends, at work, at school. And, me being the teacher in me is every time I would work with our teens and adults, I want to start by building upon their strengths. It's very easy for us as parents to say, you know what? my teen can't do this, my adult just can't do that, or he struggles in so many areas. So as I start to build upon what really works for them, I want to see what are they good at. And so for many of our individuals on the spectrum, we know that they're honest, they have integrity, their attention to detail and accuracy, they do have intense interest, so we can use that. Really ability to see the unique solutions, reliability, tendency to be logical. So we're going to talk a lot about strategies of using logic and visuals. We know many of our guys are very gifted, extremely talented with great memories. They do have interest in people. They're funny, not judgmental, less of an interest in gossip. So we're going to use all of these strengths as a tool to really teach those social skills and be coaches. And so I really want you to kind of reflect as you start to think about these strategies, what are my child's strengths? And we're going to build upon that. And also kind of taking perspective that social skills changes over time. So we know as adults, you have to ask yourself, did we practice these new skills? Knowing that social skills as an adult requires lots of different settings. So when you're a kid, really you're going to socialize at school and you're going to socialize maybe at a birthday party. But as you become an adult, it becomes more complex, right? So you've got work, you've got friend functions, family functions, and sometimes the things we did were really cute when we were little, but it's not that cute anymore as you become a teen or adult. So really understanding, do we know how to behave in certain settings? There's also a much higher demand to socialize. So as you're young and you're small children, it's kind of okay to kind of do that parallel play, right? But when you're an adult, you're kind of expected to socialize in these kinds of settings. Know that rules change. So when we were children, right, when they were small, you can kind of say, just go up, go play with them, go to the park and see what they're doing. But if I did that as an adult, someone might call the cops on me, right? So we have to realize that some of these rules, they change and shift, and we have to ask ourselves, did I teach that to my teen and adult? Same thing with greetings. Oh, go give them a hug and a kiss. It was okay when you were 5 or 6, but now, that can have some repercussions to it as well. So understanding appropriate greetings. And also know that adults don't follow the rules, right? Our guys can't stand this. So we teach them rules and they're so good at these rules and they know, okay, I know that I need to do this. I need to talk about that. And then the other adult doesn't follow the rule. And that could be really frustrating. And I think of my own relationships that I have with my friends. Sometimes people don't make sense and adults are complicated. And so for a lot of our guys, it gets very frustrating and sometimes they're better off giving up. So we got to teach that piece that yes, there are these social norms and social rules. Doesn't mean everyone always follows them. So I want you guys to kind of look at yourself as these lifelong coaches, right? So we are there to really coach and support our teens and adults, especially when it comes to socializing. And this just does not have to be mom or dad. As we kind of get older, it's really important to make sure, are the siblings involved in this, cousins, friends, really building this kind of community of support to be lifelong coaches for your child. So as we become coaches, I want us to really evaluate what is our current mindset right now. So what are your expectations? Sometimes, and I have children of my own, I have certain expectations that may not be really realistic. So maybe I think I want them to have lots of friends. I want them to go out and go to the bars and have fun, but maybe that's just not of any interest to them. So understanding, where are they? Expecting the individual, so expecting your teen or adult to have friends with different similar interests. So for example, my daughter's very into that gaming. She's not going to maybe want to be friends with the cheerleader or the popular people. So really finding friends and knowing that she's going to be friends with someone who's very similar to her because they have similar interests. Also expecting the individual to socialize appropriately without any types of supports. And that can be a problem. So a lot of us think, well, they should know how to do this by now. They're adults. They should have this figured out. But a lot of our guys still need a lot of support. And we'll talk about some of those supports a little bit later. We also have a tendency to overly correct, maybe provide too much feedback. So sometimes we have to scale back ourselves a little bit. And then there's also that other mindset where we're not providing any type of feedback. So we got to recognize what is missing. So what is missing as we become these lifelong coaches? So the first thing is sometimes, maybe not providing specific feedback. Okay. The world is nice in the sense of a lot of people around us are going to be very kind and not be very direct. And so if we as parents are not giving that direct feedback, let's say, for example, some hygiene, right? They're going to work and they stink. Now, coworkers are not going to tell the individual, hey, because maybe it's really embarrassing to say, hey, you really need to put some deodorant on, but that's something maybe you can give feedback on. So giving very specific feedback. Hey, maybe you want to wear deodorant because, again, that's kind of a social skill, making sure that they smell and that they're okay let's say at work. Again, we're looking at forgetting to teach some of those prerequisite skills. If I don't know how to small talk, right, just talk about similar interests, how am I going to maintain a long conversation? um, Even appropriate greetings. If I see a stranger and I just give them a big hug, that already they don't have the skills to even know okay, who and what kind of greetings are appropriate. We'll talk a little bit about that later as well. Failing to recognize the attempt or effort, starting strong but not being consistent. So maybe after this presentation you feel really motivated, you're going to implement these strategies, you do it for 2 weeks and we're done. So we want to really make sure that whatever strategies that you're going to pick up, it's something that you can kind of do consistently that's really feasible for your family. And then another one is wanting to make life easier for our loved ones. We are mama bears and papa bears that we really want to make sure nothing happens to our loved ones. So sometimes we're a little overprotective and we don't give them that opportunity to really practice those social skills. So, what are the benefits of being a social coach? All right. So, you can have all the therapies, but guess what? In therapy, they don't generalize these skills. So, if your teen and adult is attending a social pragmatic group, working with the therapist, it's really important that they have you so that they can practice whatever they're doing in therapy. They can now do it in a general setting, whether that's at the restaurant, the grocery stores, at a family get together. And you can work on all of those skills so that they know, okay, I'm going to take what I learned at therapy or in these skills and I can apply them to my everyday life. And we know a lot of our adults really struggle with that, generalizing the skills. Um, a really great benefit too is you helping find a source of friends. A lot of our adults really struggle in meeting other adults. And sometimes they're going to need a little bit of that push with you. So maybe coordinating with the other parents, hey, can we get a get together? Also remember, planning a get together involves a lot of those executive functioning skills that, that could be a whole other training, but that's something that you can help them with. And really also researching for available groups, available therapy. And of course, we're going to really highlight a lot of the great programming we're offering at CARD. So if you look at this Padlet, it really has all the flyers, events, groups, because we're really trying to create some of that social opportunities for a lot of our teens and adults as well. By being a social coach, you want to create a safe and open dialogue, right? So what we want to do is start getting your teen and adult comfortable talking to you, coming up to you and saying, hey, listen, this is going on or this happened, because we really want to address these issues when they're not very severe. And I'm sure maybe some of you have been there where they're really severe problems and then it becomes harder to address it. So if you kind of create that open dialogue with your teen and adult, it really serves as kind of that support for them. We really want to reinforce skills learned and using similar language from therapists and professionals. So again, for those that are in kind of therapy, making sure you work directly with the therapist to use those similar languages and keep that consistency so we can generalize the skills. And so I really want to kind of take a moment and talk about safety. So we know that poor social communication skills can have real consequences. And I know this is kind of what we all fear. This is what kind of sometimes keeps me up at night, because we know that a third of ASD children who wander or elope, they don't know their name, their address, their phone number. So just even this is a social skill, right? Being able to interact if they get lost, if something happens, really do they know how to get around, what's their phone number, what's their address, and things like that. We do see that 65% of parents have reported that their child with Asperger's have been victimized by peers. So we do see a lot of bullying because, again, if I have poor social skills, if I'm not engaging with my peers appropriately, I can then become a target of bullying. We do see that 50% reported them to be scared by their peers. And another one that I know can be concerning is that, according to the CDC, approximately 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 4 girls suffer from sexual abuse before the age of 18. So, again, we really want to teach those social skills, knowing those safety skills. Who do you talk to? What do you share? How, not putting yourself in any kind of situation that can be harmful. But now there's a whole other side to it. So not only can your teen or adult be a victim, but it can also be the perpetrator, can also commit the crime. And I know this is not something that we want to think about, but it's just something I want you to have in the back of your head because it's something we sometimes see and that we've had to address with even some of our, with constituents, and working with law enforcement. So knowing that teens and adults on autism, they do have difficulty understanding social norms, social cues, and the points of views of others. So just by looking at that, we can see where some of these behaviors can have these consequences. So if we look at the first one, which is a common one we'll see, is the harassment. So harassment is kind of defined as any repeated behavior that can make someone feel stressed or threatened. So teen adults may miss others people's subtle or nonverbal signals. So we talked about this, right? They don't really have the understanding of reading nonverbal cues. And so maybe they're interested in engaging. That doesn't mean, sexually, but just maybe they want to make a friend. And maybe that person just is not interested in talking to them. And so they're giving those nonverbal cues and they're not reading it. So they're trying even harder and harder. And now all of these efforts can then be characterized as harassment. Okay. So really making sure we have these conversations and, addressing how many times do we talk to someone? What are the boundaries? So even when someone says no or please stop, people on the spectrum might continue because they don't understand the why, right? So this happens a lot. I want it, or I'm interested in this. You're getting these subtle nonverbal cues, and now they're becoming more persistent or perseverating on it. And now we find ourselves in a harassment case. Okay. So really understanding why these social skills are important to keep, our teens and adults safe. Another one that we see is stalking. So some of our teens and adults, it has happened. Again, stalking, we look at it as activity consisting of repeated following and harassing of another person. Again, repetitive behaviors, which is a common characteristic in individuals with autism. So we see that research shows people on the spectrum continue to pursue relationships long and persistently than those without ASD. So think about it. They want to talk to their friend. Their friend doesn't pick up. So they keep calling and calling and calling, and they've left 15 missed calls. Now, maybe in their perspective, they don't see anything wrong with that because they have not been taught, hey, you call one time and then we're done. Because maybe they haven't explicitly taught this rule. And now it kind of comes off as stalking. Again, we know that our guys have difficulty in correctly interpreting those interpersonal cues. So signaling their contact with a person as unwanted. And so really they can perseverate on this desired person and a tendency to ignore social or legal consequences. And we know that puts them at risk to engage in stalking behavior. So again, we need to really make sure we teach some of those social skills, those rules of engaging, especially because it can come off as either stalking or harassment. And again, stalking and harassment, that it's not their intent, but and I've told families, there is no autism prison. There's no, it can be scary. And just because you have a diagnosis, that doesn't mean you can't be charged for a crime. So I just really want to address the safety issue. If you do suspect abuse of any kind, we of course recommend you contact 911 immediately. If you don't feel like you're in imminent danger, I still recommend that you file, a police report and, making sure that you contact the right organizations. Again, any questions, you contact CARD or your case manager as well. But now if you suspect your teen or adult is potentially committing a crime, you really have to have that direct feedback and discussion of these severe consequences. We really want to make sure that we teach those replacement behaviors, right? So, what are appropriate behaviors? Again, you call one time, you send an appropriate email. If they don't call you back, you have to let it go, even if that's really difficult for a lot of our adults. Again, we want to address the restricted interests, obsessions, and preoccupations. And for this, I really highly recommend that you would then work with a professional. And we want to determine why their harassment or stalking is occurring. And then again, implementing those replacement behaviors. So not only do we have to worry about social skills in the real world, guess what? There's a whole social skills in the media, in the social media world. And a lot of our guys really struggle here. Sometimes they overshare, they overpost, they comment, they like things all the time. And so we really have to make sure, let's say if you're a parent and you have no idea what TikTok is, you have no idea what Instagram and Snapchat and there's so many more I just didn't even add. Really try to see if you can work with their sibling to make sure that you understand what are some of the things that they're posting, and really talking about some safety and talking about whatever kind of social skills we're working on. It also applies in the social media world as well. So just really want to get this in your mind that if you don't know about this stuff and your teen and adult is on social media, to make sure that you're working with a family member, a sibling that can support you in understanding what their presence is like, so that then again, you can give that direct feedback and coach them using some of the strategies we're going to talk about. All right, so sorry. I'm going to kind of get into now the strategies part of it, especially when it comes to practicing the social skills. So I always tell our parents and caregivers and those that are on this presentation that before you start implementing things, right, we can't just, okay, we're going to start being lifelong coaches and implement all these things. You really want to start having a conversation. Make them aware that these are some of the things that we want to work on, that we're going to be providing certain strategies to make sure that you support them. None of our teens and adults like surprises. So making sure, again, you have that conversation with them, as well as getting their input. So maybe having a conversation saying, what are some of the things that you want to work on? Do you want friends? Are you struggling at work? What's going on? So making sure that maybe some of the goals that they want to work on is also incorporated into some of the strategies that you guys are implementing. Another one is really treating them like an adult. Explain why things are changing. And really another one that always works is sharing your own experience, knowing that everybody makes mistakes. So, you can share embarrassing stories or how you've handled really tough situations, and how that's worked for you. This really works too with siblings. So again, having that conversation saying, hey, everyone makes mistakes. This is what I can do during this type of situation. So the biggest thing is giving feedback. And now feedback is really crucial because there's a fine line between feedback and what they're going to perceive as criticism. And you know that once they hear criticism, nagging, they shut down. And then they're not going to want to have this conversation with you. So you want to make sure it's a two-way conversation. You're addressing the facts and observations. So if, let's say, they engage inappropriately, you want to talk about the situation. Talk about we always say using the sandwich approach. So let's say they're having a conversation, right? This is a very common one. We're talking about something and all of a sudden they interrupt, they abruptly finish a conversation and walk away. You were not done with that conversation, but they were done and they just walk away. So they're not maintaining a conversation. So then you can kind of give some feedback. I really like the way we were talking about this, the constructive feedback. I really wasn't done and you kind of just walked away. It kind of made me feel really sad because you weren't listening to me. You walked away, but I really like the way that you're making an effort to have a conversation with me. And so you want to make sure there's a lot of that positive in the constructive feedback. Sometimes we just give the constructive feedback. They just hear a lot of negative and then they shut down. So something positive, whatever the situation was, something positive, your feedback, so what the criticism is or the constructive feedback is, and then following it with, you always want to leave the conversation with something positive, because if it's a lot of negativity, they don't really want to hear it. We want to involve the individual in identifying how to do things differently next time. So, when there's a situation that happens, I always ask them, how could we have done this differently? And I have them walk through, okay, maybe I shouldn't have overreacted. I should have done this. Maybe I should have, not just left the conversation, but, paused and finished that up. Okay. So again, really understanding that society will be polite and indirect. So most people, even at, and especially think of work, right? Your coworkers, your colleagues, even your supervisor may not be very direct with you, especially on social skills. So that's something that, we as our lifelong coaches really have to be the one that gives them that specific and direct feedback. So I do a lot of feedback using questions. I always say, what was that like for Johnny when you did this? Or how do you think that makes me feel? So when they say something rude, even though they don't think it's rude, but they said something really rude, how do you think that makes me feel when you do that? And you kind of put it back on them to have themselves understand and analyze, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. I could have said something differently. So a lot of times you don't even have to say, hey, that was really rude. But you can kind of give that Socratic questioning so that they then start to reflect, oh man, when you say this, I think, or when you say this, I feel, or when someone does this, how do you think the other person feels? So this questioning really works on their perspective taking. And for a lot of our guys, they struggle with this. So this is a really great practice where this is not criticism, but it's kind of making them question the different perspective of the other person. Okay. So again, I'll send you this because these are really good questions for you to kind of work on as you start to give feedback. Now, everything in life is a teachable moment, right? So I call this the rewind. I do this with my kids. I do this at, when I was a teacher. And so any moment that I see wasn't really correct, they could have done this differently, maybe not every single moment, pick and choose your battles, but a lot of the things we want to work on, we'd call it the rewind. Now, it's really important that we don't embarrass the teen or adult. So if they're with their friends or peers or, in public, you don't want to be like, oh my goodness, why would you say that? Why would you do that? Because once you embarrass them, they're going to shut down and then they're not going to want to engage. They're not going to listen to the maybe constructive feedback that you have. So if you are going to get feedback or use a teachable moment, we want to do this privately and kind of not making this a big deal. I love using television. So Big Bang Theory is probably, especially our team, we love to use because there's so many great moments where the social skills, you can even point out, how would he done this differently? And then use a Socratic questioning, right? How do you think that made this person feel? SpongeBob, and really using shows that they enjoy. So you can go through it. Every show has some, socially awkward moment. So being able to use television as a teachable moment. Using social media. So, reputations, opinions, consequences, really using moments in social media. Let's say they share a post, really personal. We want to make sure we use that and say, listen, how do you think that other people are going to think when you post things like that? Current events, whether it's elections or weather. I do a lot of thinking out loud. So we'll talk a little bit about modeling, but, making sure we think out loud, problem solving out loud again. What if what do I do if I arrive late? What if your friend is mean to you? So we're using my personal experience, and I problem solve out loud so we can kind of show them this is how you here are the steps to problem solve, to understand social, different social opportunities and things like that. So as we know, a lot of our adults really like to think visually. So I really try to incorporate a lot of visuals in things that I do. And I really like this circles curriculum. So it really focuses on teaching social and relationship boundaries. Excuse me, interpersonal skills, relationships, social skills, And it really uses kind of a multi-layered color system. I'm going to go through it so you can kind of see how you can implement this. And it's great because, again, we're using visuals. There's a lot of common language, opportunities to teach appropriate social boundaries across different settings. So, again, we're generalizing these skills, and provides individuals with tools to advocate for themselves. So, this would be the example, right? So, I'm going to take me. So, here's me. And again, I really would recommend you can print this. And if you look at Circles curriculum, they'll even have the circles, just plain that you can put it. You can get construction paper, you can get anything, right? But just looking at the colors, it's very visually understanding. So here's me, okay? Here's my family, my friends, acquaintances, children that are not my family, and strangers. Now, this has happened to me where my daughter, who likes to play games online, Roblox is the new one, she'll say, "Oh my God, I met someone on Roblox and they're my best friend." Now, that would be really scary, right? This person that you met online is not your best friend. So this is really great because it gives you an understanding. Do they know what a friend is versus a stranger, what an acquaintance is versus your family? So it's really great to identify the people that are in your teen and adult's life, right? So this is where I would have friendships. These are the people that are your friends. These could be these are really tricky to differentiate. So a lot of our guys will say they're my best friend, but really it's just an acquaintance. And even understanding how to engage with strangers and even other children that are not family. So this is kind of how we break it down. So when it comes to your family, you're able to give full body hugs. You can give a kiss. They're your family. You're going to share your personal and private news, your questions, your feelings, and your thoughts. So this is your very close knit family. And then the bubble grows a little bit more. So your friends, now you kind of give that far away hug, a brief touch, and you can talk about personal news, right? So personal things that are going on in your life, you share those things. And then the circle gets a little bit wider. Your acquaintances. Now, you're going to give high fives or handshakes, and you can just kind of make some small talk, but this is not personal and private topics. These are your acquaintances, not your friends. And this is where it's really good, your coaching, where you're kind of helping them understand who are the people in their lives and what is appropriate. Again, small children. This has happened where understanding that small children, you can wave and smile, but you're not really going to have talk, you're not going to talk to them and have conversations. And again, when it comes to strangers, there's no touch and no contact. Now, another thing I think parents and caregivers need to understand is sometimes friendships is not motivating. We can tell our teens, don't you want to make friends? Don't you want to go and hang out with people? And for them, not really. Some of them are very content being on their computer and hanging out. So another thing we have to then understand is everyone has a social reputation, okay? Your behaviors can create negative, the little negative marks and check marks. And so you want to have, so maybe this could be reinforcing. You want to have lots of positive social reputation by engaging appropriately socially. Why? Because it makes you successful in the workplace. You can maintain relationships, maintaining those conversations. And so because our social reputation is really important. If I'm working and I have a lot of these really negative marks, and I make a mistake at work, guess what? They're more likely to just get rid of me. If I have lots of check marks in this positive column and I make a mistake at work, guess what? They're probably going to keep me and say, "Oh, she made a mistake. It's okay. We like her." Because it's really important to sometimes be liked, because it makes it more successful. So having them kind of physically, visually see that our actions can cause negative and positive reputation. And this, a lot of our guys really respond well to. Another visual I always like to use is kind of that stop sign. As you socialize, as you're going to say something, you want to stop. Before you say something, do your best to stop yourself from saying it out loud. So we want to process that in our minds. Then we want to think. Take a moment, make sure is your social filter on. So what are the consequences if I say that? What's going to make that person feel? How will it make them feel? And then go based on the decision with your comments. So really, sometimes our guys, because they're just honest, and that's a great trait, but sometimes they're a little too honest. So kind of working, especially with those skills, that we really have to stop. We call this a social filter, where they're really kind of making sure, are they thinking about what they're saying? Now, going back to those questioning, how's that going to make that other person feel? So making sure they're really stopping and thinking about that before they go ahead and engage socially. I really like these visual cards. So again, I will send you this presentation, but there's lots of really great activities that really can kind of break down what are good ways to talk to someone. So using these kind of visuals, how to make plans, remember things together, or figuring something out together, making something fun together. So it kind of gives them those social cues that could help them at least start the conversation or know where to go from there. Another really important thing is understanding your emotions, right? Because sometimes our emotions can really get in the way of us socializing. Because if I'm overreacting, we like to say those big deals, little deals. If it's a little deal and I'm making this big, reaction, guess what? Socially, that's not appropriate. And so these visuals are really crucial and helping our teens and adults understand what's going on, right? I feel a four. And what does that look like on my face? What does it feel like? And then, most importantly, what's the coping skills? So, what are things that I can do? If I feel like my head's exploding, I'm a five, I'm going to remove myself and find a quiet space. If I feel like three, let's say, and especially this is really good for those that are working, if I'm at work and I really feel at a three, I'm going to ask for help and take a break. Okay, so this is really good with self-regulation, identifying some coping strategies that work for them, and recognize when to ask and use a break. Okay. We at our team love peers. It's a really great curriculum, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But they have really great visuals for modeling, right? So just if you go at this link down here, they have tons of videos that just kind of show really funny situations where then you can kind of stop, look at the social situation and say, okay, well, what do you think that other person was thinking? And do you think that's appropriate? Is that something you would do? Because sometimes until our guys really see this, they don't realize that they're engaging in some of these behaviors or socializing in this way. So sometimes these video modeling is really helpful for them to recognize their own behaviors, and knowing, okay, you know what, maybe I can say those things, and shifting it. So going through these videos with them. Modeling yourself. So we know that modeling is based on practice found to be effective for those on the spectrum, and we want to show it how it's done. So you want to really model how to start and end those conversations, making small talk with acquaintances. How do you plan get-togethers? So the next time you're going to plan a family gathering, planning times with your friends, really working with your teen adult, be like, listen, we have a group chat. I text them, I send an email, and this is how I can plan a get together with my friends. Obviously, not now during COVID, but when it's over, then yes. Appropriate use of humor, handling disagreements. This is a big one, right? So, how do we handle disagreements? Handling feedback. Now, I always say feedback is a two-way street, right? So, if you're going to give feedback, it's also important for our adults to give you feedback. And then you want to show them, how do you handle that type of feedback? Because sometimes it's not always great to hear. Allow for questions and suggestions, and narrate how you problem solve to deal with the conflict. So a really big thing that I think some of us, we forget to do, and we're busy and we're just kind of always on the go, but we really need to stop and recognize the efforts our teens and adults make, because socializing is really hard. And so we really want to make sure, are we really providing a lot of that praise? So we typically say that 3-to-1 ratio. So 3 praises to 1 criticism. Again, we want to really be consistent and genuine. You don't always want to be like, good job, great job, that was awesome socializing, when you don't really mean it. So making sure you're genuine about it, because our guys know. So maybe using some different phrases for different behaviors. And we like to use what's called labeled praise. So You label it and you describe the specific behavior. So I really appreciate you using your social filter. I know it's tough not to say everything you are thinking, right? Because you know they're about to say some comment that they really shouldn't. And then you could see them holding back, and you want to make sure you praise for that. Praise for completion of independent activities, using interest as rewards, and changing things up to keep the motivation. And also know that they're gonna make mistakes. I know it's really hard to allow them to kind of be free to do that, because we never want to see our guys make mistakes, but we need to give them the opportunity to do so. And what we want to do is teaching them how to weigh pros and cons. How do you make decisions? How do you know when this is socially appropriate, and helping them, go through that. We always say allow choice within a limited range. We know that failures build resilience, and learning anything will involve making those mistakes. So it's ideal if they can make mistakes while you're there. So, as we get older, we start to realize there's going to be a time where our adults are going to be independent on their own. And so we want to make sure when they do make a mistake, they have that safety net, as you being the lifelong coach, to be there to help them kind of go through that. Another one is asking for help. So a lot of our guys really struggle with this. And we know that the ability to ask for help is based on their history. So, maybe they've had bullying, maybe asking and not getting the answers, or not knowing how to ask. So we want to make sure that teens and adults need to learn who to ask, when to ask, what to ask, and how to ask. Again, this kind of helps build that relationship. And we want to provide explicit instruction, right? So for those that really need help with asking, write a script and practice it. Plan in case something is missing. Provide multiple methods. So you can email, text, call in person. And if in person, teach how to interrupt and wait, right? So modeling and practicing. So the biggest thing too is really finding the support, for yourself. So make time, especially right now, I can only imagine, because we're all going through this, but really finding the time to, understand that this is tough, that this is a lot of work. You've been doing this for a long time. So I really want you to avoid the guilt, avoid the blaming, acknowledge and process your own emotions. Really, we want to recommend you joining a support group. Jennifer Feinstein, Dr. Diane Adrian run an incredible adult support group. Parent support group for adults. So please join that, find that system, because there are plenty of parents that have been in your spot, for your teen and adult. If there's any mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, attention, we want to really make sure we're addressing that as well. Getting past that stuck thinking. And I always say seek professionals, whether that's your therapist, behavioral therapist, a life coach, social skills groups, classes, and of course, always, you can reach out to your card case manager. Please know that it's a work in progress. So, we want to make sure we're setting realistic expectations for change. Now, we want to make sure, are we targeting maybe one or two things? Maybe it starts with greetings. Maybe you starting with that circles curriculum, just identifying in their life who's in each circle and the appropriate ways to greet, to interact and engage with. So really making sure you kind of target one thing at a time and setting that realistic expectation. They may not go from gaming 24/7 to all of a sudden, going to a bar. So, making sure that it does take some time. And everyone improves at different rates. So we do have some that really make great gains, and some that just take a little bit more because they need more supports. We want to make sure that, again, when, really giving that praise, and it's labeled praise, meaning you're saying specifically, hey, good job for doing whatever the behavior was. Providing supportive feedback. So again, we have to recognize that the nagging, the criticism is only going to make your teen and adult just brush you off. So it's really that sandwich. Remember, positive feedback, and then always end it on a positive. And then emphasize the positive changes. So we're working on this because we want to make sure, especially if their goal is to work, is to do a specific program. They need to have these social skills in order to be successful. So emphasize the positive changes, and again, creating those opportunities to practice. That's a big one. So the great thing is our amazing team, we are actually setting up a social skills training series. We are peer certified trainers. So for those of you that are interested to have your adults join our session, so if you look, we start in February. When you click on here, Jen might put the Eventbrite link. You can go ahead and register. These are for constituents 18 and over. There will be 3 different sessions for just the adults, and then a family session, which Dr. Diane Adrian is going to really coach the parents. Again, tying all this together, how to be those lifelong coaches. So please make sure if you're interested, this is free. It's a card service, and it will be a training for our adult constituents. Here are some really great resources. So as the teacher in me, I'm not going to give you resources without giving you the links. So these have really great strategies, visuals, different activities and ideas for you. So please go ahead and utilize that, to learn different things to implement at home. These are the things that, the 2 curriculums we really like, which is peers and social thinking. For those of you that might be interested in having your teen and adult do a social skills program, there are some peer certified trainers in the area that do these kinds of programs as well. If you need specific referrals, again, reach out to your case manager. You can always email me as well after this presentation. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop the recording.